Welcome to Biopractice webinar on best practices for FDA inspection, preparation, performance, and follow-up. The speaker for today's presentation is Jeff Kassoff, RAC, Director of Quality Medivators. During the presentation, the participants are requested to type in the questions in the chat box of the GoToMeeting tool, and the speaker would answer those questions during the Q&A session. And now, I would like to hand over to the speaker, Jeff Kassoff. Over to you, sir.
Thanks so much for the introduction. Let me welcome everybody to this webinar. For those of you who have not attended webinars before, I think really the only detriment you're going to see is that, quite honestly, I can't see you and you can't see me. I'd like to take care of that and address that at the end of the webinar by making the Q&A session, if you'd like, of course, more of a discussion. But I just want to make sure that at the end I address any of your concerns, questions, or hypotheticals. As you well know, today's inspection is about dealing with the FDA. The key to understanding an FDA inspection is that it never truly ends. You're always in one of three aspects of dealing with the FDA. Either you're preparing for their visit, or they're visiting, or you're recovering from their visit. Think of it as a big circle. It helps you prepare better for compliance, because those of us, because I'm going to include myself previously, at least in this group, who figure, well, the FDA, once the FDA is gone, the inspection is done. You can't really think of it like that, because you always have to be prepared for the FDA to be coming within the next several days. It peaks your compliance level. It really raises it to a high level, and it's something you need to be aware of throughout your practices. From an outline perspective, today's presentation will start with the authority to inspect, which is, by what right does the FDA think they can come visit my building? Then we'll cover types of inspections, because there are several, and I'll give examples of those. The pre-inspection preparation. When I speak about this, I'm speaking specifically to the imminent pre-inspection preparation. If you're fortunate enough to have a pre-announcement, or even slightly before that, developing things like a standard operating procedure and training on that, and running through drills, things like that. Then, of course, is the inspection itself, and I'll speak about what to do, what not to do during the inspection. We'll talk about the closeout meeting. That's really the end of the inspection, and I'll mention it once now because I think it requires mentioning more than once, which is to say that the closeout meeting is not necessarily going to be the end of the inspection. As long as the inspector is in your building, even if he or she intends to perform a closeout meeting and something else comes up, they can certainly choose to continue the inspection, so just be aware of that. Then post-inspection activities, what I mean is immediate post-inspection activities, and then put it together nice in a summary, hopefully that is. The right by which the FDA can visit your facility and perform an inspection is covered under the FDA&C Act, Section 704. And what it says is that the FDA agent can enter and inspect at reasonable times, within reasonable limits, and in a reasonable manner. It would be really easy if the term reasonable were defined. However, it's not defined in the regulations. What's important to remember is that the FDA is a business just like yours, and to that end they want to maximize the use of their resources. It does them no good to send somebody at 7 a.m. or at 4:59 p.m. because they're just asking for something to not enable the inspection to be accurate. And say what you will about some of the inspectors that you may have dealt with, and I've dealt with some as well, but their goal, for the most part, is to get an accurate compliance picture of your company. Certainly there are probably some out there who are just gunning to make a name for themselves and see themselves appear online as having issued 483s or even worse warning letters. But for the most part, the agents are there to assure public safety. And certainly, maybe at times they go overboard, but they're not as familiar with your processes as you are, or your products. The next time you have an FDA inspection, if you have a slightly talkative inspector, ask them the types of firms that they've inspected, and what they're going to tell you is that it's all over the place. It's class 1, 2, and 3 devices. So the same inspector may have inspected a tongue depressor factory has inspected a permanent knee implant, an artificial knee or hip. So they're going to use the same type of evaluation for your tongue depressor firm as they will for the Class 3 firm that they've used. So reasonableness is going to be subjective for that reason. Now, the question is, what if I just don't let them in? For whatever reason, whether it's inconvenient for me or it's at an unreasonable time, because reasonable is subjective, obviously, well, not letting them in is a violation of the U.S. Code of the law, because once you list your company with the FDA as a medical device or pharmaceutical manufacturer, in vitro diagnostics as well, you are explicitly allowing them access to your facilities and your records. So you can't refuse to allow them. What's going to happen is if you are unfortunate or lack the foresight and you refuse to allow them, the inspector is not going to barge their way in. They're not going to insist in strong language that you let them in. They're going to thank you for your time. They're going to turn around and they're going to leave. And then what they're going to do is they're going to contact the local judge or magistrate, and they're going to request a search warrant. And they're going to get a search warrant. And then they're going to come to your firm. A large part, which reminds me of an aside here, a large part of the FDA inspection is mental. It's how you present yourself, how the inspector perceives you're presenting yourself, and if the inspector perceives that you're hiding something, being a little combative, or not being completely forthright. The FDA inspector knows that you're going to watch what you say, and they get that. They're not going to try to play games, but if they get the feeling based on their experience that something is a little fishy, they're going to continue to ask you some more questions.